Does the Trump administration have a credibility problem in the court of law? Well, this morning, several cases around the country are pointing exactly to that, finding the evidence presented by that agent simply not credible. In another embarrassment for Trump's DOJ this week, a federal judge in Chicago says a top Border Patrol agent was lying Thursday when he said he was hit in the head with a rock before deploying tear gas on protesters. Judge Sarah Ellis called the government's portrayal of Chicago untrue, and prosecutors were initially seeking a felony charge for that man, and they failed to secure an indictment. A man who threw a Subway sandwich at an officer in Washington has been found not guilty of the only misdemeanor assault charge that he was charged with. Lastly, a magistrate judge is slamming prosecutors in James Comey's trial for their handling of evidence, accusing Trump's handpicked attorney.
Okay, so you're not going to believe what just happened in court. Like, seriously, this is one of those moments where you have to stop and ask yourself if we're living in reality or some kind of bizarre political drama series. Donald Trump just stormed out of a courtroom, but that's not even the crazy part. The judge, absolutely furious at what was happening, ordered the arrest of one of Trump's lawyers right there in the middle of the hearing, live, in front of everyone. Bailiffs escorting the attorney out in handcuffs while the courtroom descended into complete chaos. And then Trump's entire legal team, every single one of them, just stood up and walked out without waiting to be dismissed. The judge didn't say they could leave. The hearing wasn't over. They just left. Can you imagine? This is the kind of stuff that gets you disbarred. The kind of stuff that tanks your entire case. The kind of stuff that makes every future judge look at you like you're a liability. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
You said on October 30 that from what you have seen, all of the uses of force by yourself and the men under your command have been more than exemplary, your words. You still stand by that?
Yes.
So when you tackled Scott Blackburn, as shown in the video marked for identification as Exhibit 8, that use of force on your part was more than exemplary?
Objective form lacks foundation.
As we talked earlier, that was not a reportable use of force.
Not a use of
placed
force.
him in under arrest. I didn't tackle him. I placed him under arrest.
This all went down on November 8th, and the footage is everywhere. Social media is exploding. Legal experts are losing their minds because what Trump and his team just did is not just disrespectful, it's potentially criminal. You don't storm out of court. You don't ignore a judge's orders. You don't turn a legal proceeding into a circus and then act surprised when there are consequences. But Trump did all of that and more. And his lawyers, instead of trying to calm things down, instead of being the adults in the room, they backed him up. They defended his outbursts. They argued with the judge. They basically dared the court to do something about it. So the judge did. The judge issued an arrest warrant right there on the spot. No warning, no second chance. Just boom, you're under arrest. Bailiffs take this person into custody. Eyewitnesses in the courtroom say you could feel the tension before anything happened. Trump was visibly agitated. His lawyers were tense. The judge was making rulings that weren't going Trump's way, and you could see him getting more and more frustrated. Then something pushed him over the edge. Maybe it was a particular ruling. Maybe it was something the prosecutor said. But whatever it was, Trump snapped. He started loudly objecting. Not through his lawyers like you're supposed to. Him personally, yelling at the judge, complaining about the process, calling the whole thing a witch hunt or a hoax or whatever his favorite phrase is this week. And his legal team, instead of telling him to sit down and be quiet, instead of doing their job and managing their client, they joined in. They started arguing with the judge too. Now, here's the thing about judges. They don't like being disrespected in their own courtroom. They really don't like it when lawyers encourage their clients to act out. And they especially don't like it when someone tries to turn their courtroom into a political rally. This judge had clearly had enough. You could see it in their face according to people who were there. The moment where patience ran out and consequences became inevitable. The judge warned Trump's team, told them to control their client, told them to show respect for the court. And Trump's lawyers basically said no. They doubled down. They kept defending Trump's behavior. They kept arguing. So the judge did what judges do when lawyers cross the line, issued a contempt order and an arrest warrant. The bailiffs moving in to arrest Trump's lawyer, that's when everything really fell apart. Because that's when Trump stood up. That's when he started heading for the door. That's when his entire legal team realized they had a choice to make. Stay and deal with an angry judge, or follow their client out the door and deal with whatever consequences come later. They chose to follow Trump, every single one of them. just got up and walked out while the judge was still on the bench, while the hearing was still in session, while court was still in order. That's not how any of this works. You don't leave court until you're dismissed. You don't walk out on a judge. You especially don't do it as a coordinated group exit like you're staging some kind of protest. The courtroom apparently erupted. Spectators gasping, security scrambling, the prosecution team sitting there in shock because nobody expected this level of chaos. Nobody thought Trump would actually storm out. Nobody thought his lawyers would be stupid enough to follow him. But that's exactly what happened. And now Trump's legal troubles just got exponentially worse. Because not only does he still have to deal with whatever case was being heard, now he's got contempt charges. Now his lawyers are facing arrest warrants. Now every judge who hears his cases in the future is going to know he's the guy who stormed out of court. That's not good. That's actually terrible for someone facing multiple legal battles. Legal analysts are calling this a disaster, a self-inflicted wound, the kind of mistake that destroys your credibility with judges and juries. Because here's what people see. They see someone who can't control their temper, someone who doesn't respect the legal system, someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them. And judges really don't like people who think the rules don't apply to them. So buckle up because we're about to break down exactly what happened, why it matters, and what this means for Trump's already complicated legal situation. All right, let's dive into the details because this courtroom meltdown didn't happen in a vacuum. This is part of a pattern of Trump treating courtrooms like campaign rallies, a pattern of his legal team enabling behavior that any competent attorney would shut down immediately, a pattern of escalating conflict with judges that was always going to end badly. And on November 8th, it finally did. The hearing that day was supposed to be routine, or at least as routine as anything involving Trump can be. The judge was hearing arguments on various motions, making rulings on what evidence could be admitted, the normal procedural stuff that happens before trials. But Trump apparently didn't like how things were going. Multiple sources say the judge was ruling against several of his team's motions, denying requests to exclude certain evidence, allowing prosecutors to present testimony Trump didn't want heard. Now, for most defendants, this would just be part of the process. You win some motions, you lose some motions, your lawyers adapt and move forward, but Trump's not most defendants. Trump apparently takes every adverse ruling as a personal attack. Every time the judge says no to his team, he sees it as proof the system is rigged against him. So as the rulings kept going against him, his frustration kept building. People in the courtroom could see it, the body language, the whispered conversations with his attorneys, the angry looks toward the bench. It was clear something was about to blow. What nobody expected was just how spectacular the explosion would be. The breaking point came when the judge made a ruling about testimony. Exactly what testimony isn't completely clear from the reports, but it was apparently something Trump really didn't want the jury to hear, something damaging, something that would hurt his case. And instead of letting his lawyers object properly, instead of following the normal legal process, Trump just started yelling, not quietly to his attorneys, yelling at the judge, loud enough that everyone in the courtroom could hear him, saying the trial was unfair, that the judge was biased, that the whole thing was a political hit job, the kind of outburst that in any normal courtroom would get you immediately held in contempt. But here's where Trump's lawyers made their fatal mistake. Instead of trying to calm him down, instead of apologizing to the judge and asking for a recess to get their client under control, they backed him up. They started arguing with the judge too, claiming the ruling was wrong, that the judge was overstepping, that they needed to make their objections heard, basically turning Trump's personal outburst into a full team rebellion against judicial authority. And judges really don't like that, because the courtroom is the judge's domain. The judge maintains order, the judge makes rulings, and everyone else, including lawyers, has to respect that authority, or the whole system falls apart. This judge clearly decided enough was enough. According to eyewitness accounts, the judge's voice got very cold and very firm, told Trump's legal team they were dangerously close to contempt, warned them that continuing to argue and disrupt the proceedings would have serious consequences. And instead of backing down, instead of showing the basic respect for the court that every lawyer learns in their first year of law school, Trump's attorneys doubled down. They kept arguing, kept defending Trump's behavior, kept pushing back against the judge's authority. So the judge did what any judge would do in that situation, started issuing contempt citations. And when one lawyer in particular kept arguing, kept refusing to back down, the judge issued an arrest warrant right there on the spot. The moment the bailiffs started moving toward Trump's lawyer to execute that warrant, that's when everything went completely off the rails. You could hear gasps throughout the courtroom. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. A lawyer getting arrested during a hearing. That almost never happens. It's the kind of thing that ends careers, that gets you suspended or disbarred, that follows you forever in the legal community. But it was happening right there in real time. The bailiffs approaching. The lawyer realizing this wasn't a bluff. The rest of Trump's legal team watching one of their colleagues about to be taken into custody. And that's when Trump stood up and headed for the exit. He didn't ask permission, didn't wait to be excused, just started walking toward the door like he was leaving a restaurant he didn't like. His remaining lawyers watched their client leaving and had to make a split-second decision. Do they stay and face an increasingly angry judge, or do they follow Trump and deal with whatever consequences come later? They chose to follow. Every single attorney on Trump's team got up and walked out behind him. No explanation to the judge, no request to be excused, no attempt to salvage what was left of their professional dignity. They just left, turned a legal hearing into a walkout protest. The judge, according to multiple reports, was visibly furious because what Trump's team just did wasn't just disrespectful. It was a direct challenge to judicial authority. It was essentially saying, we don't have to listen to you, we don't have to respect your courtroom, and we'll leave whenever we want. That's not how the legal system works. That's not how any of this works. And the consequences for this kind of behavior can be severe. We're talking contempt charges for everyone involved, potential disbarment proceedings for the lawyers, fines, sanctions, and maybe most importantly, a permanent black mark that will follow them into every future courtroom appearance. Legal experts who've been commenting on this are basically unanimous. This was legal malpractice. This was Trump's team committing professional suicide. Because no matter how much you disagree with the judge's ruling, no matter how unfair you think the process is, you don't storm out of court. You file appeals, you make your objections on the record, you work within the system. What you don't do is turn the courtroom into a circus and then act surprised when you face consequences. But that's exactly what Trump's team did. They let their clients' anger and ego drive their decisions. They chose loyalty to Trump over their professional obligations, and now they're going to pay the price. The arrest of Trump's lawyer is particularly significant because that's not something judges do lightly. You have to really cross the line to get arrested in the middle of a hearing. You have to show such blatant disrespect for the court, such willful disregard for basic legal procedure, that the judge feels they have no choice but to take immediate action. And apparently that's exactly what happened. Trump's lawyer kept arguing even after being warned, kept talking back to the judge, kept defending behavior that was indefensible. So the judge issued the warrant and the bailiffs executed it right there in the courtroom. Now, Trump and his team are trying to spin this. They're claiming the judge is biased, that this proves the legal system is weaponized against Trump, that the arrest was politically motivated, all the usual talking points. But here's the problem. There's video of this. There are eyewitness accounts. But here's the problem. There's video of this. There are eyewitness accounts. There's a court record of exactly what happened and what was said. You can't spin your way out of storming out of court. You can't claim victimhood when you're the one who refused to follow basic courtroom decorum. The facts are the facts. And the facts show Trump and his team completely melting down in the middle of a legal hearing. This is also part of a much bigger pattern with Trump and courtrooms. This isn't the first time he's disrupted proceedings. This isn't the first time he's yelled at judges. This isn't the first time his lawyers have had to deal with a client who thinks courtroom rules don't apply to him. But this might be the most dramatic example, the most public disaster, the moment where Trump's contempt for the legal system became impossible to ignore or excuse, and is going to have consequences that extend far beyond this one hearing. Because every judge who presides over Trump's future cases now knows he's the guy who stormed out. He's the guy whose lawyers got arrested. He's the guy who turns courtrooms into circuses. And judges really don't like circuses in their courtrooms. So what does this courtroom disaster actually mean for Trump going forward? Let's break down the consequences because they're serious and they're far-reaching. First, the immediate legal implications. Trump and his entire legal team are now facing contempt charges. That's not a maybe. That's a certainty. When you walk out of court while the judge is still on the bench, while proceedings are still ongoing, you're in contempt, period. The judge has no choice but to pursue that. And contempt can mean fines, sanctions, even jail time, depending on how serious the judge considers the offense. Given how dramatic this walkout was, given that it involved an entire legal team and not just one person, you can bet this judge is going to come down hard. The lawyer who got arrested is in even worse trouble. That person is facing not just contempt charges, but potential disbarment. Bar associations take this stuff very seriously. You cannot disrespect judges. You cannot disrupt courtrooms. You cannot get arrested during a hearing and expect to keep your law license. This attorney's career might be over. And the other lawyers who walked out with Trump, they're all going to face ethics investigations at minimum. Because what they did violated so many professional responsibility rules, it's hard to count them all. Lawyers have a duty to the court that supersedes their duty to their client. They're supposed to be officers of the court first. What Trump's team did was put loyalty to their client above everything else, including their professional obligations. That's a career-ending mistake. For Trump personally, this is a PR disaster. Think about the optics. The former president storming out of court like a petulant child who didn't get his way, his lawyers getting arrested, the whole team walking out in defiance of judicial authority. That's not the image of someone who respects the rule of law. That's not the image of someone who should be trusted with power. And while Trump's base might eat it up, might see it as him fighting the system, everyone else sees chaos. They see someone who can't control themselves, someone who thinks they're above the law, someone who will blow up any situation where they don't get exactly what they want. The impact on Trump's other legal cases could be huge, because judges talk to each other, court clerks talk to each other. Everyone in the legal community is going to know about this within days if they don't already. And when Trump shows up in other courtrooms for his other cases, those judges are going to be on high alert. They're going to be ready for disruptions. They're going to be less patient with objections. They're going to come down harder on any hint of the kind of behavior that led to this walkout. Trump essentially just made every judge in every case more hostile to him and his legal arguments. That's a spectacular own goal. Jury perception is another massive problem. If any of Trump's cases actually make it to trial, and some of them will, jurors are going to know about this. They're going to have seen the videos, they're going to have heard the stories, and what are they going to think? They're going to think, here's someone who doesn't respect the legal system. Here's someone who storms out when things don't go their way. Here's someone who got their lawyer arrested. That's not someone jurors are inclined to trust or believe. Trump just poisoned the well for every jury pool in every case he's involved in. His lawyers are going to have a nightmare time trying to seat impartial jurors after this. The political implications are interesting too, because on one hand, Trump can spin this to his base as proof the system is rigged. Look at how they treated me. Look at how biased the judge was. Look at how they arrested my lawyer for defending me. That narrative will work with people who already believe Trump is a victim of political persecution. But for everyone else, for independent voters, for people on the fence, this looks bad, really bad. It looks like someone who can't handle being told no, someone who will destroy institutions rather than accept outcomes they don't like. That's not a winning message for a general election. Trump's ability to find competent legal representation is going to take a hit too. Good lawyers don't want clients who get them arrested. Good lawyers don't want to work for someone who will ignore their advice and storm out of court. Good lawyers value their licenses and their reputations. After this disaster, after watching one of Trump's attorneys get arrested and the whole team face potential disbarment, a lot of qualified attorneys are going to think twice before joining Trump's legal team. He's already had trouble finding top-tier lawyers. This just made that problem exponentially worse. The judge in this case now has enormous power over Trump. Because Trump shows such blatant disrespect, because his team staged such a dramatic walkout, the judge has every justification to impose serious sanctions. We could see Trump's team barred from making certain arguments. We could see evidence admitted that would otherwise be excluded because Trump forfeited his right to object properly. We could see the judge allowing testimony or documents that devastate Trump's case, and there's nothing Trump can do about it because he created this situation. He gave the judge all the ammunition needed to rule against him at every turn. Appeals are going to be complicated too, because normally if you disagree with a judge's ruling, you appeal it, you take it to a higher court and argue the judge made a legal error. But it's really hard to appeal when you stormed out of court. It's really hard to claim you didn't get a fair hearing when you refused to participate in the hearing. Trump's team basically forfeited their right to complain about the process by walking out on the process. Any appellate court is going to look at this and say you can't storm out of court and then complain the court treated you unfairly. That's going to make overturning adverse rulings nearly impossible. The media coverage of this is going to be brutal and sustained because this story has everything: drama, conflict, a famous defendant losing his cool, lawyers getting arrested, a judge imposing consequences. It's perfect for cable news, perfect for social media, perfect for endless analysis and commentary. So expect this to dominate coverage for days, if not weeks. Every legal analyst is going to weigh in. Every talking head is going to have an opinion, and almost all of them are going to say the same thing. Trump and his team screwed up massively, and the consequences are going to be severe. Looking long term, this could be a turning point in how courts handle disruptive defendants, especially high-profile political defendants who think they can use courtrooms as stages for political theater. This judge just sent a message: you will respect this court or you will face immediate consequences. No warnings, no second chances, just swift action to maintain order and dignity. Other judges dealing with difficult defendants are going to take note. They're going to feel empowered to crack down harder on disruptions. Trump might have just made it more difficult for anyone to use courtroom antics as a political strategy. So where does this leave us? Trump's legal situation is worse than it was before this hearing. His team is facing contempt charges and potential disbarment. His credibility with judges and juries is shot. His ability to appeal adverse rulings is compromised. His political message is complicated, and the whole world just watched him lose control in spectacular fashion. This wasn't just a bad day in court. This was a legal disaster that's going to have ripple effects across all of Trump's cases and potentially his political future. And the craziest part, it was completely avoidable. All Trump had to do was sit there and let his lawyers do their job, but he couldn't do it. and now everyone's paying the price.